Hello, I'm Mr. Baker. This is the second lecture video for Unit 1 in Biology and Honors Biology 2. They are going to be starting like this, usually with learning goals, not like we did last time. But first, before we get into those, I want to remind you on taking notes from my lecture videos, you should plan to watch and listen to the video. If you haven't gotten headphones yet, I highly suggest you do it. The school is aware of how we do lectures in Mr. Baker's class, and if you talk to your flex teacher, they should allow you to put that headphone in and listen, not just read the closed captions, not just read what's on the slides. You should, as you watch, click pause and write down what's on those slides, then listen to me talk about it and annotate your notes. Ask yourself the questions, think about what I'm saying, and write that down. If I say something's going to be on a quiz or a test, if I talk about how you should be able to use the information, it's a good idea to take note of that. If you see questions in the video, you should answer them. Most of the time, I'm going to have those written down. Sometimes I might say them only. That way, we are doing it a couple of different ways and not just the same way each time. So the learning goals, they are going to tell you what we're going to talk about in the video and what I expect you to be able to do after the video. Now, you are not going to knock it out of the park and do great the first time. That's okay. But I do want you to be working towards this, all right? So this is going to be about some basic microscopy, right? We're going to be doing that stuff in class. Obviously, you're not going to be able to use a microscope while you're taking your notes. We're also going to talk about what makes something alive, because biology is the study of life. It comes from these two words, bios and logos, study and life. So what makes something alive? These are the widely accepted attributes of life, right? You should be able to know them and what each of them are. So movement is the ability to not necessarily just move the individual organism, but move within that organism, right? We're not going to see plants get up and walk around, but they move water and nutrients throughout their stems and leaf structures. Growth and development is talking about how things are born in a certain stage of life and they are going to change and get bigger over time. Reproduction is how they make different versions of themselves or exact clones of themselves. It is not replication. Right? Reproduction is either sexual or asexual. And because of reproduction, it's always going to come from pre-existing life. The similar chemical makeup portion here is carbon-based. Here on Earth, we have only ever found carbon-based life. Carbon is a landmark element for us, right? And we're going to talk about this a lot next unit. All life is composed of cells. Irritability is a single word and it's a very sciencey word that just means it responds to stimuli. If the environment around it changes, how will it respond to that change? All living organisms require energy. They're going to either produce energy through something like photosynthesis or they're going to eat something and get energy from breaking that thing down. Keeping the state of organization and keeping the processes of a living organism going are called homeostasis, but you could just write maintains a high level of organization here. And then if it's alive, it has to be able to die, right? If it's always alive, we're going to seriously consider if it really meets all those other things, because life is a state of being, right? So our question is for you to pick two things and describe how they have or do not have each of those attributes of life. I would just make a quick little table or chart next to it and maybe in the margins of your paper and write what the object is or the thing is at the top of the chart and then put like check marks and X's for they do or do not have each of those things. Right. So microscopy. Right. A lot of living things are really small. So to see them, we have invented some science tools to help us see them better. Light microscopes are what we're going to use here in class. Electron microscopes are going to be a lot more precise, but they're also much bigger and much more expensive. So we're not going to be able to use those in class. We will see some images from them, right? So first, light microscopes. It's very simple, or they can be much more complex. A simple microscope has just one lens. It's effectively a magnifying glass. Complex light microscopes, like the one we're going to use in class, very similar to that one in the top right of this slide, have multiple lenses that work together to give a greater magnification. Electron microscopes are going to point a beam of electrons at whatever they're looking at, and as those electrons bounce back off of that thing or are refracted as they pass through that thing, they're going to be able to tell what the surface of it looks like, right? So that's transmission, and scanning microscopes can do this kind of as a video as opposed to just a single snapshot. Those are both very simplified explanations of that. We just don't need to go in very much detail. I want you to pause the video. I think a great way to draw this, because I'm going to ask you to draw it in your notes, is to just put a piece of paper over your Chromebook and trace it, right? Make sure you've got all 12 of these labels on the microscope too. We are going to talk more about microscopes in class as we try to use them. We're going to use them a few times. We're just going to have a little kind of trial part in class soon, right? So make sure you've gotten all of your notes down. Remember that these are our learning goals. I want you to be familiar with microscopes, and I want you to be able to practice observing cells and organisms with them. We're going to do that part in class. Right? I also want you to be able to describe what characteristics a living thing has, and if I give you a specific object or animal, plant, etc., I want you to be able to tell me if it's alive or not based on those things. Remember, as you have taken notes, you should have actually watched and listened to the video. You should have written down what was on each slide and then listened to me. When I said, hey, this is important, did you write down that it was important? Maybe put a little star next to it. If you had any questions, did you write them down? Make sure you wrote them down, because when we come back together in class and I go around and check your notes, that's the time where you can ask me those. If you're really, really concerned about remembering it, write it down. If you would like to send me an email, you can also do that, but writing them down in your notes will make sure I see them and we can have a face-to-face conversation about them. I will see you in class.